in the past, we've had guests on talking about performance enhancing drugs, their individual experiences. However, you are somebody that has worked closely with athletes and helped them with not only the decision whether or not to go on and the candid conversation of meeting them up with a coffee, talking about what they might do, but also some of the strategies they might have based on what age they are, where they are in their training. So one of the things we didn't manage to get onto was the female side of things. But before we get to that bit, before we get there, you are now much further along in your recovery post PEC.
Yep.
So what has training been like since then? And has anything changed about your dosing? And I'm going somewhere. I have a question for you at the end, but go ahead.
So about 14 weeks post-surgery, maybe 15 weeks. It's kind of a bit of a blur. So my training has got to a state. So I worked with the medical physio in the Hermitage. We're fantastic, but worked with them about 8 weeks post-surgery. I should have been in a sling for like the whole 10 weeks, but me being me, that didn't happen. But after the 8 weeks, she was very, very happy. The consultant was very happy. And then I started working with a guy called Dr. Seth Albertsworth. You might have noticed him on Instagram. Super intelligent guy, powerlifter himself. I think he's got like a 980 total or something. Like,
all right.
Huge. But I think he has like a 1,200 kilo multiply total as well. So he's one of these very smart kind of powerlifter as well. So he's really helped me, set me up with a plan, and that was like daily movement work and then training and very high reps, like 3 sets of like 50 reps on the bench press, increased load, dumbbell, that sort of stuff. So now that the kind of like that initial, talking about 6 or 7 weeks of that, I'm into like the final movement phase, which is phase 3. And then just recently, last week, I started kind of physically working with Dottie Curran. You know him, the physio?
Yeah.
So I went in last week and he did like some manual work just to release my pec. And then Saturday, I actually did some bench training with him. So that's kind of where I'm at now, is like just relearning those patterns in a way that's safe and that's not hurting me, that's putting me in the best position. So I'm back benching, back squatting under a bow bar, and still deadlifting.
Do you think there was value when you get into work with somebody who knows it, not only from the medical side, but also the actual performance side?
Yeah, like I researched, like I'm not gonna just put my recovery in anybody's hands. That's the truth, you know. And as much as Dottie and Kev McDermott and some of the other physios who've reached TJ, they're all fantastic. They are unbelievable, right? But I'm a very big guy, and I want to get back to the numbers or above. So the kind of background and the history Dr. Seth has is working with guys like Westside and Lee FTS and big motherfuckers, basically.
They're big boys.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're not going to ask me to try and do a T-spine extension lying on the ground. I'm sorry, but some of these physios, sometimes when they look at, I've worked with people like, oh, we need you to do this. It's like, I can't actually physically do it. Even when I'm healthy, I can't do that.
You can't put the square peg in the circle hole.
No.
So everybody doesn't respond to the same thing.
And I'm more like an Atlas stone going into the circle hole, to be honest with you. But so I wanted to work with Dr. Seth because of his range of experience and his kind of understanding. And he was straight back into, let's bench, let's dumbbell, let's actually do some physical work, rather than, I've experienced sometimes rehab can be quite like, oh, just raise your arm up. It's like, I'm going to get bored and I need to go into a gym and actually do something, general kind of way. So it was very good. So that's where I'm at now. I am just trying to build on that, trying to get my squat power back up, and then my deadlift comes with my squat, basically.
Do you find then, whether it comes to coaching, rehab, physios, even down to like diet advice, do you find, because you're like lifting the weights you're lifting, you're the size you are, you're like really outside and you're on that end of the bell curve with the average athlete size, do you think it like gets more difficult, or it takes longer to find people who will truly understand your position?
Yeah, so a great example is diet.
Yeah.
Right? The amount of people, let me flip it on you. Imagine I came to you for diet, right? You put my weight into a formula and you come up with my macros. What would it be like? Like, I'm about, let's say I'm 380 pounds now. I'm like 170 kilos.
Yeah.
Like, it would be what? Like 300 grams of protein and 500 grams or 800 grams of carbs and whatever, right? So like a lot of food. I don't eat that much food anyway. I never have. I balloon like a monster when I actually go to people to lose weight. I end up gaining weight.
Right.
So I worked with a guy I think is probably one of the best nutritionists for big performance athletes. A guy called Ellis Vine.
Mm-hmm.
He works with people like Andrea Thompson, Kane Francis, worked with Big Laws, all these people. And it didn't take long for him to realize that basically giving me carbs is like giving me fucking super juice. I think so originally after the bicep work, we got down 35 kilos in body weight. Got down to like 150. And
I remember seeing you.
Yeah.
You were like there was like half of you was gone.
Yeah. So we did that for more recovery purpose and also to get surgery. But then it was like, he was like, right, now we're going to start like training you because you want to train. It's like, right, we're going to add rice to every meal. Went from like 152 to 160 in a week.
Wow. Okay. So it literally just, your body just sucked it all up.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had to be very careful about like my food because it's just, my body wants to be big. Now, I'm not saying I can't lose weight. I can. I'm not saying like, but for me to get to like 120, I think would require, like, I'd need to really somehow manage to change how my body works. You know, I remember asking Ben Crockwell because I was like, just curious, like, what do you think my lean body mass is? And his like words were like, you're not lean, you're fat. And I know that, right? But you have a shit ton of muscle. If you look at me and you actually think like that guy weighs 400 pounds, there's a lot of muscle in me. You see me train, you know what I mean? And so it's very hard for me to determine actually how much food I need. You know, kind of way. So if I eat loads, I gain loads of weight really quickly. If I don't eat enough, I feel like shit. Yeah. So I kind of go in the middle, you know?
Okay. All right. See, those things are the interesting things because I think there's presumptions people make when they look at any kind of athlete. Like if you see somebody who is, you know, at the top end of the list, this is we were talking about just before we got started, cutting edge athlete, amazing. But like, I think people maybe don't realize it takes time to get to that level. No one just shows up. Now, again, I know probably a poor example because she was quite a natural, the powerlifting, same with Toaster down in Arms, Ewan Kalmick. Like he's actually been working away for a very long time. But people see him and say, oh, he's just a natural because he's young. But I think they can make presumptions, you know, if somebody's jacked, they can be like, oh, they're just like Ben is jacked a bit. But people might look and say, yeah, maybe he's got a naturally fast metabolism or he's really good at dieting or whatever, but they don't realize it's years of hard work and iteration. And the same thing for you. It's likely that people could look at you and say, Eamonn just eats like, you know, 12,000 calories every day, but that may not necessarily always be the case.
Yeah, I know. I remember when I went from 128, 120, like 130 to 145 in about 12, 13 weeks. Mm-hmm. I worked with Tommy Staunton.
Yeah.
I was on like 14 meals a day.
14?
Yes. I was waking up in the middle of the night to eat.
What was in them?
I think breakfast, steak, blueberries, porridge, banana, peanut butter.
So all like good stuff, but just
yes,
a shit ton of it.
There was 3 shakes in the day. They were chicken, oats, and apple juice.
A chicken
breast. Yes, they're quite nice actually. Yes.
Chicken, apple juice, and oats.
Yes.
Blended.
Yes. Yeah.
What consistency was that?
It's actually not too bad. It's actually not too bad. Yeah.
I'll take your word for
but it's not the best when you're waking up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to take your growth hormone and then drink your chicken shake.
Yeah, no, that sounds.
I remember we used to come back
awful.
to the bed and like Naomi at the time and it was like, go to kiss her. Like, don't you dare kiss me.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. So like, and then the other meals were like, I remember one meal was like, the most horrid meal was like half a kilo of cod. And like, I think it was like 200 grams of dry rice. So it's like 500 grams of, that was like one of my meals.
How long would you physically be eating?
Like 25 minutes, half an hour.
Yeah, that's
so I got to a stage where I couldn't eat, so I used a peptide called GHRP6. You ever hear of it?
No.
This isn't class, by the way. It turns off your hunger. It turns off your full brain.
Right.
Hormone. So you just don't get full.
You just eat.
Yes.
Fucking hell, man.
Yes.
That like it sounds like a form of self-torture.
Well, the goal was to gain, because I was going into I got invited to like a Giants Life qualifier comp at the time. They weren't very Giants Life strongman, and it was in Scotland, and it was like one of the deadlift event was like 310 for reps.
Right. Okay. So you had to come in big.
The super yoke I think was like 450 or something, and like the events was a max axle, you know, and I was like, I have to fucking do everything I can to be ready for this competition. So I was training on bunch at the time. I think I was training like twice a day.
Yeah.
If I was doing like kind of heavy stuff in the morning and more stuff. And then I was just either eating or preparing food all day.
What did you say the time frame was?
About 12, 14 weeks.
And how many kilos?
Like 15.
So more than a kilo a week, basically.
Yeah.
Can your body realistically utilize that much extra mass that quickly? Now, I'm asking from like strictly a performance side, you know?
I don't know. Like, it's hard to tell because, like, the one thing I would say, you know, when like you look at bodybuilders prepping, they're dying all through the day and they get some carbs before training and they feel like a monster. I was like supercharged when I was training. Like, if I put a goal I wanted to hit 8 reps on a deadlift, I was hitting 12.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was just a monster when I was training because everything I was doing in my day was getting me ready for training.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Tommy is a fantastic coach. Recommend him to any, especially bodybuilders. An amazing dietitian, but he's an all or nothing type of guy. He asked me, was I all or nothing for this? And I unfortunately learned the lesson that when I say yes, I really meant yes. And that's why I learned. That's why anybody that comes to me, I'm like, Tommy's a great diet guy, and so is Ellis. And I'm like, but I wouldn't work with Tommy again unless I'm in a position in my life where I can go like that.
Yeah, 100%. That's
like
something.
I did it kind of, I don't know if you noticed, like when we did COVID, I went back and worked with him, and I was the same. I was like huge, and I was like feeling like a monster, but I was eating like 10, 12. I was spending about 200 euro every 2 days on food.
Fucking hell, man. Like, see, the thing is like, I obviously hear this from the side. Like, I worked with probably over 1,000 people now at this stage anyway, between powerlifting, general public, loads of different sports. But like the vast, I think I've only ever worked with like maybe 2 to 3 enhanced lifters. And that's why I ask these questions, because there's so much I see enhanced lifters do that completely contradicts the advice we would give to a natural athlete. Like, I would never want somebody to gain that, not even remotely that close of an acute weight gain phase. You know what I mean? I'd want people to do gaining phases, but like that acute weight gain over 1 kilo a week is like mind-boggling to me. And this is why I want to know more about it. Like, it's going to tie into something I want to ask you soon enough about injuries. But like, when you do something like that and you have to eat like that, and I know we touched off it a little bit in episode 1, is it a case of if you want to be somebody who totals over 900, totals 1,000, you know what I mean, pulls 400 kilo plus deadlifts, do you have to be the person that's willing to be that at that edge?
Yes and no, right? So the yes is the fact that, like, I'm not the most athletically gifted. I know that, right? I just know it. I'm a big guy, and I just know for certain. Like, you look at, I've been around people. Like, I played rugby with Ty Furlong. I see what that is. You see people like Listus. You see people like Laura. You see Jake, right? And you go, these guys are genetically really, really good. Like Jake, I think squat 300 kilos in the first comp. Some people work all their lives to squat 300 kilos. Yeah, right. Look at Laura. Look at Listus is a great example. Genetic freak, but she puts hard work in. So fair play to her. Well done. Keep it up, Listus. But so I'm like, in my head, I kind of got this like mindset from Clontarf when I played rugby. It was like, I'm going to out fucking work you guys. I'm going to do more. I'm going to put more into it. When I turn around to someone like Tommy Staunton, who I believe, and I still believe at the time, is probably the best dietitian coach for athletes or like bodybuilders and stuff in this country, because trains people like Blessing and things like that. And he gives me a plan. I'm going to follow it. That's it, you know? And he's like, right, let's make you like Thor. Let's make you like Eddie Hall. I'm like, oh, that's great. But the reality of what that is just crazy. Yeah. It is just crazy, you know? And no, you don't have to do that to total 900 or 1,000 kilos, because there's plenty of guys in the world who do that. But I do. Right. And that's kind of, but then let's take someone like Lenny. That's great. So I did Lenny's diet, right? I look at Lenny and I go, this guy is a motherfucking freak. Yeah, he is.
He is unbelievable. Yeah.
So I talked to him a bit about food, and he's like, I eat this, and I eat pasta, and I eat chicken. And I'm like, right, let's like start like breaking this down. Like, Lenny is eating, he works with Conor Kieran now. I just don't have the time to coach. I think between 11 and 12,000 calories on training day.
Yeah. But he's done a day of eating before, and it was crazy to look at, the amount of food this man was putting away.
Yeah, but that's me. None against. We put that diet in place, and the only way I was able to put that diet in place and to actually tell someone you need to eat this amount of food a day is because I was able to do it with Tommy and do it myself. Do you know that kind of way? I don't think any other nutritionist would have ever got Lenny to his full potential level. I'm not being egotistical, because unless you've worked with people who literally can just keep eating, keep fueling, there's like a point where you go, well, he's doing okay. See, I knew Lenny could do better, but it was like I just had this feeling in my head going, he needs to be fueled more. He's a kind of tank. His tank isn't there yet.
Yeah.
And I think it's only because I was able to do those things with people like Tommy, who's also learned from guys who are also eating loads of food and stuff, that I learned that Lenny needed that much food. Like, honestly, say Lenny came to you without this diet in place, would you have had him anywhere close to the amount of food? Probably not, because it's unimaginable for a 90 kilo man to be eating 10,000 calories a day.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean about this. It's these conversations, I think, open the door, even a crack, to understand what some athletes can do. Now, obviously the performance enhancing drugs play a huge part, but the other piece of it is that you just have people that fall outside like the vast majority of people, and the people listening as well, will probably fall into the margin somewhere where you could just throw their statistics into a calorie calculator and it will spit out something about right, you know? Whereas you've got these people on the really higher end of response that will just be able to push, and then naturally people on the lower end who maybe need to eat a bit less than they would like, or they're gonna probably not end up with the results that they want. But the reason I ask these things is because it's to, again, as I said, open that doorway, just even a crack, just to get a peek in, try and understand it from the other side. And then this kind of ties back into when we were last had you in and we were talking about some of the bits and pieces around where you have to go mentally for your big performances, right? And I actually only shared a clip of that on Instagram before I came, and it's gotten huge reply. And it's for that, because I think that to me was one of the most eye-opening parts of our last chat, because I don't think I've ever done that. I don't think I've ever been there, you know?
Yeah. And
it's interesting to learn from athletes that have been around a long time, the why behind it. Like, even we talked, you've been injured, worked your way back in the best prep of your life, only to become injured again. And it's how much mental grit does it take to stay on the hamster wheel, you know?
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because it's something that actually came up recently in a conversation I had with Jake, and I wanted to actually run it by you. So I think you'll agree with me that your prep for Clash of Titans leading into April was a fantastic prep, and you were definitely on form to have an excellent day had the injury not occurred.
Yeah, I was the strongest I ever was.
In the lead up to the meet, so we're 6-8 weeks out, right? Did you change your drugs?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I have a follow-up question. You don't have to give specifics.
No. So, disclaimer, you don't do this. I made a decision, and basically was like, you know, when you make a huge investment in something and you know there's a really big possible downfall the other side of things, I was aware of this.
Okay.
Right? So I was fully in the mindset that if I totaled 1,000 kilos at Clash Titan, I was retiring.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
So that has to be put out there, because about 24 weeks out, I start running a proper cycle. Usually you're running from about 12 weeks. And that meant I pushed, knowing that the other side of it, I'd have to lose weight, I'd have to do a lot of health things, I'd have to fix my body, right? So when I got to about 8 weeks out, everything was going so well, everything was going great, and I transitioned to about 6 weeks, and I was running testosterone, masterone, and DECA. And DECA's a great one for holding a bit of water, salt, potassium, electrolytes, that sort of stuff. So at about 6 weeks out, I was playing with the idea of introducing Tren. Now, everyone knows about Tren due to Jake's episodes. Watch Jake's episodes. Tren doesn't affect me the same way as it affects Jake and Ben. They'll tell you the same. But it does affect me. And the problem is that I dropped the DECA because I basically, what's the best way to explain it? The estrogen from the Tren and the DECA, I believe, was fucking with me. because what happened was I ended up dropping like 7 or 8 kilos in like 2 or 3 days. Remember I told you about this? And I was working with Ellis, not working, but Ellis Vine is a good friend of mine. So I sent him a message, was like, listen, this has gone on. What do you think? And he's like, drop the tren, or drop the DECA and drop the tren a little bit down, because basically you've metabolized too much and your body's just running into overdrive. And he got me to refeed. So I did like a 3-day refeed of like 1,000 grams of carbs each day. And I kind of got back up to normal body and I was feeling good. But I didn't put the DECA back in because I was afraid of that happening again. So in post-analysis, I believe that without the DECA there, the tren and Masteron kind of went wild. I was like, hey, we got too much to play with. And that's what led to a possible drying of the joints, or a possibility that, and I added the kind of, so Anadrol is like a carb cycling drug, but it kind of, it would bloat you, if that makes sense. In bodybuilding world, it wouldn't be used in like prep for, because you'd look like a bloated. And I added out some halo testing on top of that. Halo testing I had some real halo testing, which is so crazy. So most halo testing you get is false, because how I knew it was real was I was taking it and then I wanted to kill you. So usually I take my orals with breakfast and let them sit for it, and then I take another one before I train. I actually couldn't, because I started getting into fights with my missus. I started making like bad decisions in work, and I was like, I need to fucking calm this down. I remember turning around to Jake and Ben, and I was like, that halo testing's real. And he's like, why? And I think there was like, on Sunday, the girls were in the corner, and after their big squats are done, they were laughing and joking, and we still had our big squats. And I was like, I just want to fucking kill them all. Stop talking shite. And that was like my mind, because I was like, that halo was working.
Yeah, it's a dark place to go.
But it also works on the same kind of line as the Masteron and Tren. It dried me out as well. Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah. So this is kind of leading to where I want to go. First thing I'm going to do is,
oh, thanks.
I'm just maneuvering your mic a little bit closer, just in case, just so our sound levels match. But this is kind of where I'm going with this, right? I asked Jake about this, and same idea. Jake was having an excellent prep. He had locked in his deadlift. They were finally starting to come together, and then a week and a half out, 2 weeks out, whatever it was, his forearm, elbow, shoulder went.
Yeah.
And I know more about his scenario because he actually worked with me quite closely. We were prepping together because I had Last Chance in December. I had Irish Nationals in end of February. So he was there for a lot of my prepping. So we were, benching together, deadlifting together. I'd see him for squats. And training was going really well for both of us. And then there was just that moment, that like flip, where he just had no power left in his arm. And it was bizarre because he was doubling huge weights, like maybe 3 or 4 weeks before. And in conversations we've had since, it's the one factor that changed was the drugs. So I asked him this question the other day, and Jay was sitting there and kind of concurred with where I was going, is if everything was going well, why change anything?
Oh. So from the clash, right? The clash, the comp, the comp that I have wanted for Ireland, for Jay to run for nearly all of my powerlifting career, right?
Mm-hmm.
He comes to me even 2 months before he announced and goes, I'm doing it, Eamonn. We have 10 guys. We finally have 10 guys. Because he's always wanted to do it, but it was a case of, I need 10 guys who can make it a good show.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the likes of Tren and Halo, and these drugs are so powerful to make you stronger. But they cannot be ran for too long, or your liver just follow your arse. So it's very hard, egotistically, to be like, oh my God, I need to keep going. Need to keep going, because the Clash is the ultimate. Do everything you can. There's no body weight restrictions. There's no dots, and even like you were there for some of the training that we were doing, like, and I will get that mind. I have that mindset in my head, but we were like willing to rip each other's fucking heads off for that, to win that day.
Yeah.
You know, like some of the squats we did, remember I did like 370 for a double or something, and I think I passed out after, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Ben was similar at the start, and you saw Jake, and we were pushing each other like mad. So there's a kind of, and then you got to give credit to Jay. Jay is like, do you ever hear the stories about Louis like putting people against each other?
Yeah.
You know? Jay would text Jay. Jay would text Jake in the morning and go, hey, is Eamonn going to beat you today?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Have you ever seen the picture in his locker?
No.
He has a picture in his locker. I won't say what it says, but there's a picture that Jay put in Jake's locker for when he lost at Abs Pro in 2019.
He made a banner about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, don't settle for second place. Yeah.
Yes,
That
yes.
still hangs in the Charlestown Industrial Estate.
Yeah.
It's still
yeah.
there.
Yeah. But there's also like, me and Jake have known each other a very long time.
Yeah.
And the competitiveness that we have is like very, very deep. And Jay knows that. So Jay, like, he was like pitting us against each other. He's actually trying to kind of do it now with me with Conor Kieran. It's quite funny because he's like put him on the same squat bar as me. He's like, Jay was like, just annoy him, just beat him. Because last week he did like 230 on the bow bar. I did like 231 just to piss him off.
I was wondering what I saw. You had the chips on. I was like, what are they doing?
Yeah, but that's how I do it.
Yeah.
Just to annoy him, because then I went around and called him bitch boy all day.
Yeah. I mean, if it gets him pushing harder, why not? Like,
well, it's a fun part of
giving
training.
someone to work with.
Yeah. So, answer your question. I have set 5 things out for myself for next prep that are non-negotiables, and one of them is having a good drugs coach.
Okay.
Because last time I let my ego run away. I can control my food. I know eat too much or I kind of a bit more, but I need a drugs coach. I need someone to be like, no, we're actually going to keep on the same path. So everything's working fine. Just stay the same. You know? So that's one thing I'm definitely going to be doing, is having a drugs coach.
What are the other 3 things? So you're getting a drugs coach. You're going to keep your nutrition dialed in.
Bloods.
Yep.
I'll get my bloods on the start of prep and halfway through prep to see where I'm at. And the third thing is physio every week.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's something I need to do, which is because of my injuries. I need physio every week.
Okay. All right. Interesting, because that's why I asked. Because when I put the question to Jake, because I said it to him, I said, you were popping off. Everything was moving great. You were in a great mood. You had so much left in the tank every week. And then you changed the drugs and you fucked yourself up. And the irony, and I said this to him, was we've had conversations here about newer powerlifters 6 weeks out and they hit the oh shit button. What can I do to get stronger now? Probably fucking nothing. So I was so dumbfounded. Why do so many enhanced lifters suddenly change their stack when things are going okay? And his honest answer, and fair play to me, is like, do you know what, Ian? I don't know. That's just what we do. It's just what's always been done.
Yeah. I've said this to Jay about kind of now that he's coaching people like Luke Tolman and other enhanced lifters, that we possibly need to bring an outside consultant in as kind of like a drugs consultant, because we have abs nutrition, we have the coaching, we have the atmosphere, we have the people who, like, TJ is basically going to be the pro-am guy for like therapy and stuff. We need a guy who's willing to sit down with we pay for it ourselves, but willing to sit down and be like, listen, this is our prep. And then he'd be like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Because a system works so well, ab system works well because everyone works on the same page. It's kind of something, the extras, because more enhanced, bigger lifters are coming to Jay. So it's kind of, and Jay's not an expert. He'd tell you himself. He's not going to turn around and say, I want you to take this or that. He's not going to do that. You know, that kind of way. He never actually has. Like, to be honest with you, I don't think we've ever had a conversation be like, hey, I think this. He'll just be like, no, whatever you think. Because he knows I know a lot, but it's very hard to coach yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
So that's the thing, isn't it? It's even if you have all the knowledge, keeping the objective view is tough. I think that, like, this is why most coaches have coaches. It's why people who are always dialed in with nutrition still work with a dietitian or nutritionist or whatever, because it's easier to free up that mental bandwidth to focus on something else and not let your emotions get tied up in it and let somebody else do the data-driven stuff. They can take an objective view. I agree. I think it would probably be a good idea, because if we look back over the couple of weeks leading into that meet, people were dropping like flies.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was crazy. Like, and as you said, the nature of that meet was that you could push everything because there was no weight classes. It was just the biggest total. And I think that was, as you said, the unique element to it was the meet you really wanted. I assume you're going to aim to compete at it next year.
Yes.
Excellent. Because I will say this, that was probably one of the most, like I commentated it with Alexander Clark, one of the most entertaining meets I've ever had the privilege of commentating. It was great fun, and I'm actually looking forward. We've got the pro in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. It was probably one of the hardest things I ever did to be there and help and handle and stuff.
Can you say, would you say with confidence you were one of the major drivers behind the scenes to make this meet happen?
Yes and no. Jay always had the idea in his head. He loved big dogs. He thinks it's class. Jay loves powerlifting, but ultimately he loves big ass weights being moved.
Yes.
You can see that, do you know, kind of way. And from day one, we've always said we wanted. Like the very first Abs Pro, I was the biggest total.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, I won. Because a couple of years prior, there was Nero, VTech, and Jake, right? So those three guys were the big total guys. Nero especially was like considered this like mysterious legend of a Lithuanian man because he had no social media. He'd come in total like 930, which was humongous at the time.
Still humongous now.
It is, but it's not like the biggest. And basically from day one, I was like, VTech started coaching me, I want to beat you. And I want to beat Nero. So I told 880 at the first Abs Pro. And that was the biggest total.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I came fourth on Wilkes or whatever was done that time.
It was Wilkes back then, yeah.
Yeah. But I was like, this is shit. I should have won. I put up the biggest total. I bet everybody. Nobody's lifted more than me, you know? So we've always wanted it. But the thing is, what Jay had an idea in his head was he needed it to be a comp where 10 people were committed to abs as a comp who could all be strong enough to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At that time, you might have only had 5 guys in Ireland who could do it. And most of them are so egotistical they wouldn't do it anyway because they all compete in their own little comps and wouldn't do it.
Yeah. That's actually something I'll ask. I wasn't planning to, but what do you think about, there's a lot of so-called elite level lifters and the weights they've put up at official comps are very impressive, but a lot of them won't do abs.
So for some people, right, powerlifting is very much about them, right? So that's okay. Some people like to be the superstar of the day. So they like to go to a competition, like a qualifier or something like that, and be the only person squatting over 300, so they have all the attention, right? And they put up a big total at the comp and whatever. I've always pushed people to compete at abs or a pro show of some sort. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be abs. Does that make sense? It can be a pro show. But I've always wanted to compete with people who are good. Because like one of the like most special things, and you probably like notice this, I don't know, was it a story where you were like, you said you were like competing in a pro-am, it was like me and Jake and Ben were competing, and you were out in the warm-up room and you looked around and you were like, what the fuck?
Yeah. That was actually my very first meet.
Right.
It was Abs Series 1.
Okay.
It was March or April 2019. And
that's the one I took the injectable halo.
Yeah.
And I was bleeding everywhere.
You and Jake were literally not looking at each other.
Yes.
You're just sitting completely facing opposite each other.
Yes.
And
we didn't like each other at that stage.
Yeah.
A lot. We didn't like each other at all.
So, because I knew who you both were from Insta. Like Jake was in the same school as me, so I knew who Jake Brennan was. I used to sit next to his younger brother in first year in school. It was crazy. Like, so I knew you guys had trained together, and I knew you had a club, and he had left and come to Abs. So I assumed there was something. Now again, it doesn't matter what, but I knew at the time I was like, holy shit! Like here I am with my first meet and my CrossFit knee sleeves, and there are these two gigantic motherfuckers back here. And I remember Jake nearly tripped over a belt. And
I can only imagine.
So he went, who the fuck? And he picked it up, and you know the total board that used to be behind the deadlift, just like fucked it at that. Like, I was like, this is amazing.
That year I had won WPC Worlds in Russia.
Yeah.
Right? First 905 total, won in fucking Russia. And we got ready for Abs Pro. That was the 880. I wasn't too happy with Abs Pro. And I was like, I'm going to coach myself. So I got ready for that comp. And yeah, so I like trained like a madman. And then at that comp, I won't say who, a friend of mine gave me this mixture of injectable Halo and Anadrol. Oh my God. Like, I took it in my arm, like, I think I took it in the fucking warm-up room. Jay came up to me, was like, do you mind not taking that in front of everyone? I was like, I don't know. I'm so used to fucking drugs being everywhere. It's fucking, I think Naomi was like injecting me in the arm or something. And it sent me, like, my blood pressure went, every squat I did, my nose would blow up, and I was like red like a fucking tomato. But I wanted to kill everyone because Halo's bad. Yeah, but me and Jake were not very good friends at that. It was a real, like, because the time Jake had only, like, he totaled like 9, 10, and I was like the big boy. So it was like a real clash of the two of us. Do you know that kind of way?
See, I remember the thing about that meet was, because obviously it was the very first one. It was after the whole fallout of trying to cancel Jay.
Oh, yes.
So he wasn't sure how the meet would go. So there was only us and I think maybe 20 other lifters. It wasn't huge. That's how I ended up in the same flight as you guys. Because again, I actually, shout out to Jercules. He helped me warm up because his younger brother, I think, did it, or somebody he knew was doing it.
Well, Jer was part of Layak.
Yeah, that's right. But I remember.
And Layak traveled like Westside. If we competed, everyone went.
Yeah.
And everyone was in the warm-up room, wrapping knees, getting water, getting food. It was like...
It was good.
It was a family.
I think Jay Boggin competed at it as well.
Yeah, he was Layak as well.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, so I think he was warming up Jay, something like that.
Yes.
And he just did rack heights and all for me as well. It was cool. It was a nice thing. You remember, I only ever tried the squat bar when I got onto the platform.
Right, okay. So and it was my Sakari squat bar that...
Yeah. One of the monos was yours originally as
well. The mono was mine as well,
yeah.
So
funny how it all comes together, isn't it?
Yeah, I just, like, 2 days after comp, or day before comp, I actually dismantled that, put it on the back of a van, drove it down, and then put it up in Jay's.
I actually think when I went to weigh in, you guys were rocking up with the mono. I think I was leaving because there was 2 young guys. I don't think they trained there anymore, and they were doing the spreadsheet. Like, incidentally, right?
Sorry.
Do you remember what body weight you were for that meet?
160.
160. So I know at the very end of the last episode, we had a quick look at a photograph you had shown of you competing in strongman at 105.
Yeah.
And I believe at the very end of the episode, you said the heaviest you'd ever competed was 185.
Yes.
So that's 185 kilos for everybody listening. And that's over 400 pounds.
Yes.
That was one of the major things I wanted to bring you back on to talk about.
Okay.
So
let's go.
Firstly, was it just a natural, this is the first question of many, was it just a natural, like, okay, I'm 105, I'm going to go up to about 120, and then like 125, and now I'm going to push for 130, then 145, and it just over the years became this thing to get bigger? Or I know for a good while you did the vertical diet and things like that, so was this just a step by step, or what was the motivation to get as big as you got?
So when I started powerlifting, multiply powerlifting, Westside Barbell was like the thing. And he also had strongman. So, and at that time it was Big Z, Brian Shaw, the big boys. And the events were really heavy, so they were getting bigger. Like, remember, did you ever see the picture of Brian Shaw at nearly 500 pound body weight?
Doesn't ring a bell. I've watched a good bit of Brian Shaw, but I don't know.
It's like a really old picture he took, like when he's working with Nate and Payton. They drove him. I think he got like 480 or 490 or something.
Right. Because
the time that the Arnold was like, they had like the first like 700 kilo yoke at the competition or something. I've always been inspired by the big, you know, but totaling 1,000 kilos, deadlifting 400 in comp. And just being a big, very strong person has always been like a goal of mine. When you put it that way, 105 to 185, but I've been competing for about 10 years. So I've put about 8 to 10 kilos on a year. Mm-hmm. But my body doesn't seem to want to drop. So like at the moment I'm eating like 3 meals a day, 4 meals if I'm lucky. And I'm still 170. Mm-hmm. You know, that kind of way. I'm taking a meal a test a week, so I'm not even like, you know, that kind of way.
Do you feel different at different weights? Like, do you physically feel in your day-to-day life, not even in training, like is you at 185, does that feel similar to when you're 160, or is it massively different?
So what happens is you get there, it feels horrendous, and then you settle into it and it feels grand.
Okay. But like, what's day-to-day life like at 185 kilos?
Well, the first things first, and well, actually, like, people are gonna laugh. Like, I don't really fit on a toilet.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when I go toilet, it's a bit, but like, I take up. You know the way you got the seat, you got to take up the seat.
Yeah.
I just sit like that because if I sit like that, my legs,
Yeah.
I don't really get to go toilet that way.
I get
Does that
you,
make
mate.
sense?
Yeah.
Your body can be extremely stiff. Like, obviously training comes into that, but like getting out of bed,
Mm-hmm.
a normal bed, I'm not fitting in a normal bed. Do you know the kind of way I'm? Food is grand. I don't eat that much food, but just normal things like getting in a car,
Yeah.
sitting on a chair. Is this chair not going to collapse underneath me?
Mm.
Do you know that kind of way? Yeah, it's hard to. It's kind of who I am, so I don't really know. Do you know that kind of way?
Do you think a lot of your identity is tied up in being just huge?
Yes, but it's also because of the fact that, like, I also have especially put this. Don't want to sound like Liam Neeson. I also have the skills within my job that comes along with being a bigger guy, if that makes sense. So if a hard situation was to happen, or if I was a bouncer or a security, or just the ability to be like defend, like look after myself or look after my missus, or you know, that kind of way, like, those skills are also there. Does that make sense?
For sure.
So therefore, being big comes with that.
Yeah, but like, surely, for example, you could be 120 kilos and still be capable of those things.
Yes, but there is an egotistical thing that comes with the fact that I am. See, the difference is being 185 kilos, right?
Yeah.
But being 185 kilos and strong and being able to move is different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I hate saying this because it makes me feel like a hard man. I can fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can fight, and I have, like, as my job, like, I can fight, and I very rarely lose. I'm not an MMA fighter, but I rarely lose. And that comes with that. But then being 185 kilos of a fat slob that can't actually fight or move or do anything, that's a different story. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the thing is that, like, I'm not trying to, like,
No, you're fine.
disqualify your motivations to do it. It's kind of more trying to get into the experience of what it is, you know? Because, yeah, like, I mean, it's easy to hear, like, if your average person's walking around, like, an average girl is probably walking around somewhere between 60 and 77, maybe 80 kilos, in that range. Most average lads are probably in the range of about 85 to 105, let's just say.
Yeah.
So that sounds like astronomically more.
Yes.
Like, you're like me, when I compete, you at 185 is twice my weight.
Yes.
Or more, you know? So it's for me to try and imagine what life feels like. Both pros and cons, because, like, as you said, you're a big dude, you're super strong, but it's, as you said, it's difficult to navigate things like getting in and out of a car, lying in your bed, using the toilet, sitting on chairs. These are the things that I think when people hear that, they're the natural things for them to go, but why? But how? You know? Do you have any, like, common things when people find out you're weight and they're like, but why this, or how do you do this?
A lot of people are concerned about my heart.
Yeah.
Puts a lot of stress on my heart. People are worried about my knees. Some people are worried about my knees. A big one that came about after the chest injury was actually people blaming my body weight on the fact I got hurt.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So
I think I would look at the drugs before I'd look at body weight.
Yes, but some people were kind of like maybe you were trying to use too much body weight and not enough muscles, therefore your body just copped out a little bit or something. That's something I heard from one person. I was like, that's okay. You keep that opinion to yourself. The common one is that I'm unhealthy, right? Mm-hmm. And that I'm going to die because I'm so heavy, right? My dad and mom worry about me being so heavy. Do you know that kind of way? However, when I get bloods done, most times my cholesterol is completely okay. My triglycerides are around 2. And then, you know, the kind of way, and I can move, I can squat, I can walk, I can, like, but you see me train. I'm not like, I'm not puffing and puffing.
I've seen you running up and down with the sled.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm healthy, and I'm healthy is relative to what you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm not like super, like super healthy. Like anybody is super healthy, you know what I mean? But I'm pretty sure I'm healthier than most people who weigh 80 kilos who don't train.
Okay, so this is the thing I can definitely see a logical point on, is that the person who is, even if you take an underweight person, somebody who's like 10% body fat.
Yeah.
If you somebody who's 10% body fat and they don't train, they're definitely, by most accounts, outside of certain circumstances, going to be more unhealthy than somebody who is the same weight that does train.
Yeah.
Who's the same body fat that does train, because training is just a net positive. But it's like fair enough that correlation does not necessarily equal causation, right? But I think what people's concern stems from is that in most cases, excess adiposity or excess fat tissue is correlated with all-cause mortality, cardiac arrest, lung damage, heart failure, all these other contributors. So it's like whatever your likelihood of suffering with one of these things is increased because of excess tissue, regardless to these. It's like you could have the fittest person in the world. They run marathons. They are super healthy with their diet choices, low body fat, but they smoke. Now, they're probably still healthier because they do all these other good things, but the smoking is still increasing their likelihood of lung cancer, etc., cardiac cancer, because respiratory cancer, because they engage in this activity. So I think a lot of it stems from, it's despite all the good things you do. And like I said, I've seen you train. I know you can move. I know you're not limited in a way that might be presumed because of your size. But I don't think it takes away from the fact that these are correlators with poor health outcomes in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you hear things like that, like what goes through your head?
Oh, what's the best way to put this? I'm going to achieve my goal, and then I will then do what I need to do to be a more healthier person. Does that make sense?
That was actually my next question.
Yeah,
is like,
that's it. The thing that, so here's what's the best way to put this? I do a lot to keep myself healthy. I get bloods done. I look after myself. I actually, people don't realize I always go keto after a competition for before I drop a load of weight. I drop about 10% of my body weight sometimes. And then I go into diets and stuff. I don't eat a lot of crap. I look after myself. Maybe I do eat a pizza and stuff now and again, but like if it took so much work for me to stay at this body weight, right? If I was intently having to eat 10 meals a day every day to stay here, or I'd drop body weight, I would have no bother being lighter. That's the truth. Like, trust me, I'd like to be 150 and walking around, because it would just make my life a little bit easier in regards to even just normal things. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But I don't have to do much to stay here. Does that make sense? So I just am I going to put, this is the way I look at it. So your body's in homeostasis, right? When you try to gain weight, you're putting extreme out. When you're trying to lose weight, you're putting extreme out. Okay? So if I was like, right, I want to be 150, but I need to diet really hard, which I need to do. I basically have to go carb free for me to get to 150, right? Because last time we got to 150, we were on like 1,400 calories a day.
Okay.
That's what it took.
Yeah.
And Ellis was like, this doesn't make sense. You should be able to eat more, but your body weight's not dropping. He was really he was dropping about 100 calories. He started 5,000, dropped 100 calories. And it's we get to a point, he was like, we're going to have to just get to this point where we have to, rice cakes and fucking chicken, because you're just not dropping body weight for a couple of weeks. I wasn't taking much drugs. There wasn't anything going on. I was training. I was cardioing. Still wasn't moving that way. That's just the way my body responds. Probably lots of you guys out there going, oh, if I worked with him, I'd drop loads of weight. He's doing the wrong way. Trust me, I've worked with lots of people. My body doesn't. I played rugby at 138 kilos, ran 80 minutes, trained 6 days a week. And I wasn't eating 10,000 calories to stay at that weight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not hard for me to stay here, and I'm not unhealthy. But it benefits my overall goal, which is to be the strongest person on this island, basically. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at with it. You know what I mean?
Do you think you need to be this heavy to be that person? Could hypothetically, because I put this to Jake and he doesn't think he could total 1,000 unless he was around 145, 150. But I would posit that, fair enough, obviously bigger generally equals bigger weights lifted. But do you think you could be someone who is 140 and still total 1,000 kilos?
Why though?
Why do it?
Why?
Why would you want to do it?
So why would you put yourself in a position, right?
Mm.
So for me, for example,
Yeah.
where I'd have to strenuously watch every grain of rice I eat, right? Go into training probably half fueled, or possibly full fueled if I get an old cheat meal that day or something like that.
Yeah.
To achieve a total, right?
Yeah.
At a certain body weight.
Mm-hmm.
Jake is the first man to total 1,000 kilos.
Yeah.
In Ireland. Jake is not the first man to total 1,000 kilos at 143 body weight.
Yeah.
No one talks like that. It's who is this, like when I total 1,002.5, I'll be that man on the board.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
For sure, yeah.
So why would I do now? Here's people don't even realize this, but I have a secondary goal. People don't realize. I want to win Abs Pro.
Okay.
How do I win Abs Pro? Get lighter.
Okay.
So I will do it to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so let me put it just to answer the question of the why, right?
Okay.
And this is, I would never say your motivations are bad or wrong or anything
No.
But I would put it through the lens of, if I was to apply this to myself, right? I've had a conversation in the past with Jay where he said he wanted me to gain up to 107 kilos. And he said, because there's less competition in the under 120s in the IPF. And the likelihood is if I got up to that weight, my total would get much bigger. And it probably would, especially if I did it over a period of time where I could make the majority of it muscle, let's just say, right? But it's not worth it to me to gain 15 kilos and all the complications that go with that to have an extra 30 or 40 kilos on my total. That's not worth it to me. Now, maybe it is worth that to you. And I'm not saying that's wrong.
No.
But I think it depends on your big picture. You know, I don't want to be I don't think any amount of performance on a platformer, and look, and to be honest, I know I will preface this. I realize this is what separates cutting edge 1%, 0.1% athletes from the rest of them, is the willingness to take those risks. I don't think it's worth for the majority of people, the vast majority of people, to put a chronic stressor on their body to achieve that little bit more. Whereas you may or you may not do it in a healthier body composition, at a healthier weight, in a healthier size, or whatever you deem it to be. You might do it, you might not. Fair enough. But I don't know that sacrifice in a long period of time, maybe in a acute period of time, small period of time, is worth it. But I don't think in a long, for me anyway, it's not. But that isn't to say I don't think for you. But that's why I asked.
Yeah.
Do you think you could potentially do it? And obviously, if you're going to do the Abs Pro, the likelihood is you will do it then. But I get your point that if the goal is the biggest total, why even care about the body weight?
Yes.
Do what makes you the strongest.
So the way I look at it is this, right?
Yeah.
So let's take you, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you come along to me and you say to me, hey, I want a total. What's your best total at the moment? Sorry, I'm not.
It's okay, 750.
Right. You want a total 900.
Yeah.
Right? So you'll go to me, I want a total 900, right? I'm going to look at the statistics of how many people who weigh, what do you weigh at the moment?
About 95-ish.
Right, so 93 is your class, let's say, because you're not, unless you want to be 105, but let's say 90. How many people in this country, because it's better to look countrywide and then UK and then Europe, have total 900 kilos at 93, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to find a lot.
I don't think anyone that I can think of off the top of my head.
Lenny will be the first.
Lenny will be the first, I think,
right?
yeah.
Why is Lenny going to be first? Because he's willing to get to 105 and then come down to 93.
Mm-hmm.
But so then we look at it go, so how do we achieve that goal, right? You want to be 900 kilos. So the best, easiest way to do, and this comes from Boris Shako, the mastermind of powerlifting, is you would do it at 110, and then you would do it at 100, then you would do it at 95, and then you would do it at 93.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is much easier. You probably know this because you dropped weight dropped the weight class last time. Yeah. It's much easier to squat 270 when you've already done it than at a lighter. Yeah,
and listen, I will say this. Initially, I was actually gaining in to do the Abs series. There's an IPF Pro-Am flight at the Abs Pro this August, and then I got the invitation to Western Euros. So I was in a gaining phase and had to come back the other way.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, in that time that I was gaining, training was flying, numbers are shooting up. But I definitely got to a point where I was like, as soon as I finish in August, I need to get this extra weight off me. And it was only maybe 5 kilos.
Yeah.
But I didn't like how it felt.
Let me just finish.
Sure.
Sure. So the goal is 900, right?
Yeah.
And the goal is that. So the problem with powerlifters is we look at everything microly in a 12 to 24 week period, right? If you look at it macroly, you say 900 kilos. I've had this conversation with Lenny.
Sure, yeah.
5 years. First 3 years, we get you big. We total our 900. Then the next 2 years, we knock off the 100. Then we knock off the 93.
Yeah.
Right? So if you actually look at my body weight, now take injuries out of it.
Yeah.
I was like 150, 160 when I totaled 900 first. I was like 158, 165 between that when I totaled 930, right? So I went up to 170, 180, fueling my performance, knowing in my head, or feeling in my head when I got to that weight, that's the way I need to be the strongest I can be. My squat has gone up, my bench has came back, my deadlift has gone up. And if I combine the all three, I'll get my 1,000. That's like the 5-year plan of how I've looked at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So too many people look at me and go, you're 185 for a year or 2 years. Like, it's not, I'm 10 years lifting. It's only a third or less than a third of my actual lifting career I've been this body weight.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
For sure, yeah.
So if you look at it that way, you actually can see that it's not like the weight, the health problems. It's kind of like, did you ever hear the phrase of babies will bounce?
Yeah.
Your body will bounce. Unless you're really stupid. Look at heroin addicts, crack addicts, right? What they can do to their body in 2 years and still bounce back and their body will still function. Travis Ortmeyer, did you hear his story?
No.
World's strongest man competitor, ended up on pain pills, ended up becoming a crackhead.
Okay.
Got off the stuff, came back and competed in World's Strongest Man.
Okay.
Very, very small, but look with Travis Ortmeyer. Amazingly inspiring story. But that's exactly, the body bounce backs. So I can bounce back from being 2 or 3 years, 185, and the side effects that come with that. Because I'm not looking at it 1 year or 12 weeks or 6 months. I'm looking at it going, in the 5 years, and I've only started 5 years with abs. So this is in my head. It was like 5 years with abs. When I started with abs, Jay did tell me to get bigger because we're going to total that 1,000 kilos. It's simple to look at it. Jake is saying he doesn't think he can total 1,000 at a lighter body weight. Because if you look at the statistics, there's not that many people doing it minus a certain body weight. Unless a lot of them, to be honest with you, have this, if they get used to the kabuki bar and they're sumo deadlifters, they can technologize out of the raw strength of it. But if you actually look at the amount of people who total 1,000 kilos in Europe, who pull conventional, and I'm not, but who pull conventional, which is more of a, they are big.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's very little of them who are not big.
Yeah.
So, and those very few, you're probably looking at them going, he's like 5'8", but at 140 kilos, that's like a man who's 6'3" or 6'4", 185 kilos. Does that make sense? So it is statistics a little bit, is that if you want to squat 900 pounds, very hard to do that at 300 pounds. Dan Bell is like 440 pounds. I met him in person. He's a humongous man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you get what I'm saying?
I do. So this is, I have a couple of, I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate.
Go ahead.
With you. So one is that everything you're saying makes absolute sense if your one and only goal is to have a big, massive total in the very narrow scope of powerlifting.
Yeah.
But life doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Yes.
So, and yes, you're right, the body can bounce back. And I do think, like I said, if you go through an acute phase of gaining to have a better outcome at the end, because generally speaking, particularly if you want to gain good lean tissue, you probably are going to have to eat in a surplus for a period of time to gain some productive size, and with that will come more adipose tissue. But I would generally, I've talked to Ben a few times, I think you got to keep things within margins. If your biggest outcome, and this is where I think the split happens, is if your goal is biggest total, right?
Yes.
Everything else is secondary, everything, right? Whereas if you're saying, I want the biggest total I can get, but stay the healthiest I can while doing that, I think that's when you're going to start splitting hairs. And I do agree, if you chase two rabbits, you ultimately lose both. And I think that's fair. And I think it comes down to individual preferences and what is actually the biggest priority.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What is healthy?
I was actually going to ask you that question earlier.
What is healthy? So in my eyes,
yeah,
your bloods, right? So if your cholesterol's in the healthy range, your blood pressure is in a healthy range, right? Now, liver and that's in kidneys, they're going to be affected by PEDs, so we can't really, we can use them, but we're trying to keep them in a healthier range.
Yeah.
Okay, so those two, your VO2 max, your GPP, right? Your are you taking any current medication to stay alive? So blood pressure medication, statins, heart medication. Are you diabetic? Do you have Crohn's? Are you IBS?
Yeah.
Right. No. Blood pressure perfect. Bring me down to a boots here. We'll do it. My blood pressure is exactly what it needs to be. 120/80. I think is the. So many people when I got the surgery were looking at it going, I'm going to do that again because they didn't think it was going to be so. Triglycerides, cholesterol are in a good function. I can train. I can function. I do not take any medication for my blood sugars. My blood sugars, right? If you know anything about diabetic blood sugars, do you?
Yeah, surface level stuff, yeah.
What's an average? What's supposed to be good? Like between 3 and 4?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. My bloods come back down to 4 after 2 hours after eating 500 grams of carbs and 200 grams of protein.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah, so...
sorry.
No, go ahead.
So, tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
But the only thing that's not tick is my body weight's not where you think it should be.
Well, so this is where I would hop in and say, you're absolutely correct. And I don't think, and I would agree with most people, you cannot look at a person, how healthy or unhealthy they are based on body composition. You could see somebody with a six-pack who is dying of cancer. You could see somebody who's very overweight, but like moves incredibly well. And as you said, has very good health metrics, right? So that's the point isn't whether or not you're like, so if we accept all those things as binary metrics of what could represent overall health, I would agree, right? But I would say is that it's like this. If you know somebody who's a smoker, right? I'm just going to use smoking again as an analogy. That does not necessarily mean they're going to die of lung cancer. In fact, that could have no long-term negative effects on their health at all. But the likelihood of them eventually developing that problem is exacerbated multiple times over because they engage in that activity. Yeah. So the idea isn't necessarily that carrying excess adipose tissue in and of itself is bad or negative, or you should just lose weight because, but it invites more potential downfalls when especially when it's a longer period of time. Because I know you mentioned, being 185 for 2 years is only a very small snapshot of your entire training career. Absolutely true. But I would probably say that if we look at the metric of like clinical obesity, right? And I'll use you as an example. I know you won't get offended. You've probably been categorizable as that even as an active individual for more than 5 years. So it's not necessarily that 185 is the negative point. Even being like 160, 150 even is probably still in that range. And again, I would agree with you. If you say your bloods are coming back clear, your blood sugars are fine, your heart rate, your blood pressure is fine, these are all great things, and it's good that you keep on top of them. And I wouldn't even necessarily say, I'm not even telling you I think you should lose weight.
No.
It's trying to get that peek behind the curtain of what life is like, what are the things you do to manage it. And I think the self-awareness element is good as well. Yeah. I think it's a vital piece of the puzzle. And then I think when it's having these conversations, I try to approach it from the perspective of, if I was somebody who had who doesn't know you, that had the opportunity to sit down and ask you, what would they ask you? Because like, I obviously see you train and I see you move. So I know you're getting on fine. Now, as I said, it depends on the person's priorities as what they think is worth it. Like I said, for me personally, no total is worth becoming morbidly obese. It just isn't.
Yes.
But I'm not saying that my value set should be everybody else's. In the same way, there's some powerlifters that, they're like 300 kilos I deadlifted 300 kilos at 74 kilos body weight. Yeah. Like for some people, they think that's the, best thing since sliced bread. So I think it's not necessarily saying which is best. It's accepting that different people have different avenues for what they see success as and what they're willing to do to get there. And to be honest, I've had a conversation in here before with Raquel Ria, and we were talking about how people can sometimes misconstrue obesity with laziness. And I think it's the opposite, because you'll see people that are CEOs of companies that carry excess body fat, but they're obviously maxing out in another field of life. And I would probably say, and whether or not I personally think I could do it or I agree with it or not, the fact that you're willing to take things to an extreme to achieve a result, I think is reflective of your like competitive spirit. So regardless to what me or anybody else thinks, I think it is probably representative of your dedication to strength sports and your ultimate goals.
Yeah. Listen, it's always going to be a point of contention because one, right, you have people's confirmation bias. You know what confirmation bias is? If we explain a little bit to people if they
By
don't
all
understand
means,
it,
hit it.
is basically you have an idea of what's right? And that's always going to be in your head. So if I don't fit that little like section of what's right, I'm not right. That's fine. You also have the cultural look at being fat, being overweight, being clinically obese, which then stems into people's kind of like original idea of why they started training. A lot of people started training because they wanted to look better. They didn't want to be fat. They wanted to look better. So it's a very important thing to them. Therefore, somebody who is not aiming to look better is nearly challenging their internal, internal locus of control of what they believe is right. And therefore, it's wrong. And I don't fit into that. So therefore, I'm wrong. And then the third one is that you also like your profession, you're an educator, you're a coach, but you also need to sell, right? So being a big fat blob is not going to help you sell, right? So when I was a PT, I really couldn't sell that I'm in really good shape, right? I could sell I was strong and I was educated. So I sold the idea of injury prevention, not like you'll look better. Does that make sense?
For sure, yeah.
So these things all kind of come together to why to a lot of people I'm wrong, right? So I'll tell you a funny story about me and Ben.
Yeah.
So Ben is in great shape, right? And Ben has an opinion, which everyone has heard about on the podcast, about coming down to a certain percentage of body fat, being at the percentage. If you're over it, it's negative towards X and Y and all that, right? So me and Ben are also really good friends. So you can imagine how many conversations we've had about this.
I'd actually love to have one of them here.
Yes, we should do it sometime. But ultimately, I turned around to Ben and I said, listen, your picture of what's perfect, right? Which is very important because your picture of what you put as perfect is actually very important to everything, not just you. Revolves around, one, the fact that he fell in love with Stan Efferding's ideas from a young kind of age. Stan Efferding's in great shape. He was very strong also. Your picture of what's perfect is your picture, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. You're doing what you need to do to achieve your goals, right? But my picture is based off people like Andy Bolton, AJ Roberts, Jake Anderson, Brian Shaw, Big Z, right? They're my idols. Not one of those guys are coming around with a 6-pack, 15% body fat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, granted, most of these boys are not the healthiest now. Do you know that kind of way? Like my favorite bodybuilder is Marcus Rule.
Yeah.
Fair, yeah. That shows you. His favorite bodybuilder is probably, Dexter Jackson.
Yeah.
Or, that kind of way. So, like, you have to have this if you have that picture, but then we kind of came to an idea, right? Our friendship or our training partnership is to work with each other to make each other better. So how about I keep your mentality, which is I'm very good at, and also holding them back, then training like 7 days a week. How about I remind you of that, right? And how about you take the good things, which is eating enough meals in a day, getting good sleep, being smart about recovery, not overstressing. How about you help me with that? And we'll put aside our little locus of control.
Yeah.
That I think that Ben would be a much better lifter if he weighed 140. Right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He thinks I'd be a much better lifter if I was shredded. I don't think so. But when you get two really good people, and this is where management comes in, and you get a bit older, don't fight each other. He's really good at these things, and I'm really good at these things, and how we become really good training partners is we combine.
Yeah.
Yeah? So when anybody thinks about giving their opinion to me, especially if I don't ask you about my body weight, right? Try to understand that one, you're not me, And two, unless you have something to offer me, and I mean that, shut your mouth. Because I've been around this game so long, I'm like 10, 12 years in it. I've talked to some of the best coaches. Like I've literally talked to Louis Simmons and Boris Shako. I've been invited to sit down with these people because they respect my opinion on things. I've helped people like Laura, helped Lenny, helped Jake at the start. You know the kind of way?
Mm-hmm.
I've helped other people. So my knowledge and my ability to seek out information is quite good.
Mm-hmm.
So if I believed I needed to be 160, right, my picture, I would do it.
Yeah.
Because I have the people who would help me because they do that. But I don't believe that's the thing. Because the people I've approached have told me, Louis Simmons, about 10 years ago, told me I need to weigh 380 pounds to total 1,000 kilos raw. He told me himself exactly those words. The people I work with or the people I trust have told me, yes, a bigger you is a more fueled up performance, strong Eamonn. When you lose weight, you're not as strong. That's it.
No, I actually really like the idea, you used the analogy there of you and Ben, because I think it is that everyone's got their own value sets that they use to project out onto the world. And we tend to be quite contentious. I was talking to Adam Phillips here from Odyssey Strength, and we were talking a bit about the othering of people, you know? And it's bizarre because, especially in powerlifting, we're probably more aligned on most things than so many other outlets, because all we are all trying to do is lift the most weights. And after that is kind of irrelevant to the fact that we're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I've spoken openly. One of the things I actually do like about powerlifting is that it is a sport where you don't necessarily need to be a certain size or shape to take part. And I think that's to its incredible strength. And I would also say, like, any of the questions, even just talking about like body composition and the time you've been in this, from going from 105 to 185 or whatever that period of time is, you know, living at 400 pounds, as we taglined in the last episode. A lot of it I'm curious about is the why, not the morality, do you know? The why and the how and the what it's like. And like I'm guilty of it as myself. I sat here and I put it through the lens of, could I do that? Because I'm putting it through my lens of my value set. And don't get me wrong, I acknowledge that we're two incredibly different people. We just happen to want to achieve similar things. Obviously, you're going to total 1,000 kilos. I'm not, like, you know. But
why couldn't you?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that, right, let's just even explore that for 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say if I was willing to take every barrier out of my way, could I take a crack at it? Who knows? But the thing is that I don't know if I'm willing to do the things it takes to be there. Whereas I think you are.
Yeah,
I think that's what inherently, like I said, is there's a thing in, like, I know we were talking about before you came, you were on a holiday in Japan. There's a thing in Japan, particularly in pro wrestling, they have the fighting spirit. And I think that's in strength sports, you have that fighting spirit. You know what I mean? And I think that's a really cool thing to embody in whatever way that takes shape and form. And I know for Jake, that's his like textbook squat. Dave Richardson, it's his excellent deadlift.
Yeah.
And I know for you now, it's been, for a long time you were a big deadlift guy, but it seems now you're just becoming a big total guy.
Yeah.
You know? So
no, it's like, what's the best way to even caveat off this? Powerlifting is fantastic because it includes everybody, but it also excludes everybody. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's explore that a little bit. It includes everyone because anyone can get under a bar and total, like, bench 25 kilos because there only has to be, and then squat, and then they get like loads of new beginners coming along. The problem with it is that you try to, because powerlifting is such a vast world of X and Y, you go in there and you go, where's my little part in this big wall of things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that sometimes certain lifters or group of lifters or categories of lifters try to tear down other categories of lifters to achieve a higher place in the wall, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But the wall is very, very big, right? And it's very different because there's untested, there's tested, there's also the different bars, wraps,
equipped, non-equipped,
slift, equipped. And we don't need to tear other people down to become a better place on the wall in powerlifting. We need to encourage each other, right? We need to encourage what it takes to become the best, right? To achieve the best for the sport. Okay? I'll tell you this now, and you know this for a fact. You were to sit down with the best 64 kilo lifter guy in the world, the best, let's say, I'm not going to name them all, 5 best total guys, and then like 3 or 4 super heavyweight guys, right? Ray Williams, Dan Bell, and then put me and Jake in there or something. No, we're not the best.
Sure.
Do you think any of us are going to try and put the other person down?
No.
Right? You put the 15th seed of all of those weight classes, and the first thing they will try and do is big themselves and put the other people down.
Yeah. Hate only ever comes from below.
Yes. But that's the whole thing. Is like, so people come into powerlifting and they need to be a bit more, it's like, you know what? Let's all work together.
Yeah.
Let's all work together to be better. Do you know that kind of way? Let's all be like ultimately better because we have collectively become better.
Yeah.
Abs is a great example of that.
Yeah.
But you do see now and again groups of little concoctions of lifters.
I think you're going to get that whenever you
Yes.
get enough people in one space.
And they also have like a lot of 20-year-olds and kind
Yeah.
of teenagers who think their way is the only way.
Well, I mean, I talked a little. I think we may have mentioned it on the last one, maybe not, but I know that's a huge thing. Like, it was the powerlifters that have come into powerlifting since 2020 onwards might not know who Louis Simmons is, who Dan Bell is, who Ed Cohen is.
Yeah.
They only know their current cohort of like TikTok
Yes.
lifters and Instagram lifters, and who's big in USAPL, who's big in the IPF, who's big wherever,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So I think that's like a cultural thing as well. But just the last thing I want to mention, just on the, because I knew we'd explore this bodyweight thing for a bit, right? Just on the nature of where we've kind of gone with the topic. Do you think, this is kind of a two-parter, do you think when people talk about it, it is coming from a place of hatred or judging, or do you think some of it may be guided or misguided or misinformed whenever they're talking to you about your weight or the PEDs or whatever it might be, or the what's happened to you, like injury-wise, because of the sports you take part in? Do you think some of it might just actually genuinely come from concern?
Yes, if they're people that I trust. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So you get a bit older, you learn to trust the same people. Like, there's probably about maybe 5 or 6 people in abs that I would truly listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd probably be surprised if I told you who they were. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But because, one, they'd have to fall into 3 categories for me. They're brutally honest, which means they'll tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Right? Those people are not the ones who are putting up the big numbers. They're the ones I'll have no bother training with and stripping the bar from 200 down to 44. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The super knowledgeable people who actually I give a shit about their opinion because they've gone to college, they've spent thousands on consultations, they've coached people, they've done this, they've done that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the experienced people. Because knowledge and experience are 2 different things.
Mm-hmm.
And those people, they're the 3 types of people I'll actually talk to. And that's really like in work, in powerlifting, in anything I do. They're the 3 types of people I talk to. Anybody else, I don't really care.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not offering me anything that's going to make me better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're not. And I don't. Here's the thing. I'm 32. Right? I've been married. I have a good job. I don't need to impress you to make me feel better anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the truth. I have a great group of friends who I grew up with my life, who I can turn around at any stage of my life and go, hey, I need to go out for a drink with you, and be like, yeah, let's have a conversation. I don't need to make you my friend. I don't need to impress you. I don't need to peacock.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need to do that. So why should I even give a shit what you say?
Yeah.
You know that kind of way? Now, sometimes you'll actually listen to them because you feel like it's I've had some young lads talk to me, right? And they'll offer me their opinion and they're talking. And I actually think, I realize that, do you ever get this? They're talking to you because they've put so much effort into thinking what they're going to say to you So you actually go, oh, that's really good. I never thought about it that way. Even though your head going, that's stupid. But you do it because they've put that time and effort into thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
They feel comfortable enough with you, which is fantastic, to come up and talk to you about it. And then they present the idea to you. And then you go, yeah, that's cool. However, this might be an issue or this might be an issue. But you know what? That's a really cool idea. Thank you very much. I'll think about it and I'll go away. And then they feel great about themselves. That might make them feel better about actually then passing on some good knowledge to another younger lifter or something. Do you know that kind of way?
For sure. I think as well as that, you don't necessarily have to justify your existence to anybody.
No.
You know, you can do it. In reality, you can do whatever the hell you want. Like, you're not hurting anybody by wanting to do what you want to do. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Especially like people that, like, I work with people like homeless people and stuff. So like, if I have to justify my existence compared to some of the people I work with who are criminals, who do horrible things, who've done horrible things, there's something wrong there. Do you know, kind of way, like I'm not like hurting people being a 185 kilo power lifter.
Yeah. And do you know what? It kind of brings me to what I really wanted to ask about next. And I think it is that idea of having to justify decisions that you want to make for whatever your justifications are. Like in your case, your number one goal is this 1,000 kilo total.
1,002.5.
1,002.5 just for you, Jake.
Yes.
So that's the number one goal. Despite everything else, this is what you want to get, and respect for that. Like I've said, like, you know, it takes a serious contender to be willing to do everything you've been willing to do to push this far and to come back from what you've come back from. And then that kind of ties into one topic we didn't get to cover last time. We were talking a bit about PEDs.
Yep.
We were almost exclusively focused on males.
Yes.
And I think this is commonly where the conversation goes because, to be honest, the biggest uptake, probably in surplus of 90% of PED use in powerlifting, is probably young males and probably across all sports.
Yeah.
However, there is a female side to this that is completely different. The approach is different, I'd imagine. I'd imagine your advice is different. And I know this was a topic we said we'd talk about last time, but I wanted to give it a little bit of time now. Yeah. So last time I gave you the scenario, you have two different lifters. I won't necessarily do the same thing this time, but how do those conversations go? Because I'd imagine they're quite different.
Oh, they're so different because the side effects with women are permanent.
Mm-hmm.
And so like infertility, masculine features, voice dropping, hair growth, heart growth, these things, for a lot of them, for men, there is ways to counteract them. So you've heard a lot of like people who've possibly became infertile due to steroid use, and then they've gone through protocols, HCG and stuff, and they became fertile again. Not really happening for women.
Okay,
it's a much more complex process, because they are a hormone bomb anyway. Mm-hmm. We all know that, you know, the kind of way. So you're adding these exogenous hormones into the body, and it really fucks with things.
Yeah, like, and this is like my ignorant take, but like, it is primarily male hormone you're using in a female.
Well, but this is the thing. So when you have a conversation with males, it's kind of like you go, these are steroids. Would you like to take them? And why? When you have a conversation with females, it's like these are one group of steroids, these are another group of steroids, and this is the third group of steroids. How far are you willing to go in that groupage? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, one group would just be like SARMs, orals, Anavar, D-ball now, like very selectively, and then that'd be one groupage. The second groupage would be injectable, where you're moving to a small level of testosterone, and then you're using estrogen-driven drugs like MPP, DECA, Equipoise. Now, disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, and even with my knowledge of female PEDs, there is more specialized people out there who you might want to get on. Actually be kind of interesting for you to get on, because these guys are very knowledgeable. They can tell you the science behind it, which is interesting. And then you have the third type, which is like adding that like human growth hormone, insulin, and faster actor kind of PEDs. which is also injectable, but more different than kind of testosterone based stuff. So when you have that conversation, 98% of them want to stay in category A. They do not want to inject.
Okay.
They don't mind taking a tablet or something to help them kind of like move to that next level. But the idea of an injectable is like, oh no, I'm not going there. Not moving to that next stage.
Can I ask a question here? Just what
Yep.
you mentioned the 3 groups, and is there? You were mentioning the effects are a lot more permanent. There's a not just a physiological change, but literally a physical change.
Yes.
Is there a point of no return with that? Like, is as soon as you start using group A or the first type, or is it a point when you go to injectables? When is it that like you have to kind of say, look, when we start this protocol, it's no going back. These things are going to happen.
So if you want to get technical, when you take one drug, it's a single drug use. When you take more than 2 or 2 or more, it's a poly drug use.
Okay.
So when you move to a poly drug cycle, you are more inclined to see and experience the side effects.
Okay.
So like, and then the thing about there are certain drugs that have long lasting effects, and that basically you're just going to stay with that effect if you take them. Now, granted, one cycle is not going to be, but there's not a lot of people out there who are going to take one cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then just stop. Unless they're like, say hypothetically, someone with a 600 kilo total came along and said, I want to get 650, and you go, right, we're going to do a cycle and we're going to get ready for this comp, we're going to achieve your goal, and then you're done.
Yeah.
It's not really going to work like that. So if you're poly drug using and you know that these particular things are causing a serious side effect and a long lasting effect, then you have to make the person aware that particular drugs are going to cause X and Y. Okay? And then they have to make a decision if they're okay with that. Which, for a lot of women, they don't really understand the implications of it. So a lot of times I actually get the women who come to me, which is more than you'd actually think, to have conversations with people I know who have been maybe retired powerlifters back like in the 70s and 80s who have, when drugs would have been quite normal to take. I'll get them to talk to those particular people to actually just have a woman's, without saying, like, don't blast me off, have a woman's view on it.
Yeah.
This is how it's affected my life. Because it's very hard for me to tell a woman, no matter what I think, like, I was going to do this, it's going to do that. It's like,
yeah, you're still a bloke, like.
Yes. So that's kind of like how it goes. So it's realistically, unless I'm working with somebody and they've already came on cycle, I would never put a woman on cycle.
So this kind of ties into what I wanted to ask. I know we talked about before, if you have a grown man who's been training a while and he's made the decision he's going to do this, who are you to tell him he shouldn't
exactly.
or he can't? You're just going to try and advise him, because if he doesn't get the info from you, he's going to go get it somewhere else, probably the person he's buying it off.
Yeah.
How does that conversation go with a woman in the same position?
Well, the thing about women is, and maybe you have experiences, they're a lot more single trusting.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say no, I don't seem to get them kind of going, I'm going to go to my boyfriend or someone else and he's going to get stuff for me. Where if you say no to a lad, he's going to get it eventually. You'll be like, you've really got strong over last foot and you're going to acne. What's going on? Oh, I managed to get that testosterone because my friend's friend had it. You don't seem to kind of get it from women as much.
Yeah.
Maybe once I've done it, but I actually dropped her because she did it.
Right.
Because she tried to do it completely sneakily behind me, and then I noticed some things, and then what was the best? She kind of just like, everything changed with her, and I was like, what are you doing? And she told me, I was like, so not only did I tell you no because of the reasons why I told her, right? So no was like a very important. The reason actually was she had just managed to get back with her partner, right? And a lot of work went into that. And they were finally kind of happy again. And unfortunately, steroids for women really makes them like very highly driven in the bedroom department.
Okay.
Extremely driven.
Is it more so than males?
Yes.
Or is it just that it's more noticeable?
It's nearly more like they lose their sense of inhibition. It's like when they're drunk, do you know, kind of way. So it's a real kind of like, and I was like, your life is not in a stage now where if I give you a load of drugs, you probably will go off and do what originally fucking fucked your life up in the first place, which was getting with somebody else.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense? So I don't want to be part of that. You're going to PB your total at this comp anyway, so let's just do it. And in that, grow your life with your partner. And then when you get in a more stable position, then we can add stuff that might change your head. And then you'll be in a more stable position to do that. So, does that make sense? Yeah. So she went off and did that, and I was like, I'm not part of this, because unfortunately I knew her partner as well. So I was like, I'm not part of this, and you're not going to find another coach.
Yeah. So I'm always curious about that, like, because, you know, there's the newspaper article, roid rage and all this sort of shit. But how much of an impact does the stuff have on your train of thought, your mood? I know we've talked a little bit about certain, like everyone jokes about Jake on Trent, you know, but like, I'd imagine it's definitely a factor in the lads, but like, is it different somehow in women? Like, does it affect their moods differently?
Yeah. From what I've experienced, they kind of go, one, obviously the bedroom we just said about, but not that they get angry, it just gets more snappy.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But the body doesn't know what's going on because the hormones are so exogenous to them. It's crazy. Like, realistically, if you're a female, right, unless you are top 5% of the world, don't take anything. Really, don't take anything, because you're just going to put yourself in a position. The females that I have coached or I know take stuff would still be the top if they didn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, if certain lifters came to me and we got them coached, they'd still be smashing out big numbers. Do you know, kind of way? The people who are really strong for being untested are still really strong regardless. It's like what we say with me and Jake. If us on not in PEDs, we'd probably still be the top echelon of the 120 pluses in the country for IPF. That's not a doubt, is it? Like, you know, kind of way?
I get you, yeah, for sure.
So that's but the thing about it is, like, in Ireland, there's really no point as a powerlifter, as a woman, because the main competition is in the tested divisions. So therefore, it's like, realistically, you don't have an avenue to compete. There's very little avenue for you to compete in the country if you're an untested female. See,
I definitely, the motivations are an interesting piece, because I kind of get it from a male point of view, because we're essentially adding in more man gravy. You know what I mean? It's everything that already made you male is just 10x. You know what I mean? This is obviously a really rudimentary way to look at it, but like, I'd imagine it's a much bigger and more consequential decision for females.
A lot of it is that when they come over to powerlifting, they've already been on it from some sort of transformation or bodybuilding coaching.
Right, okay. So do you think that's where it stems from?
Yes. So I would say 95% of the people who came to me who want to start powerlifting coaching have already taken X and Y. So it X's them out of competing out of the IPF or any other tested. So therefore it's like, right, let's kick it on. Let's just do what we need to do in the right thing. You know, that kind of way? But most of them come with some sort of, like, they would have taken some sort of Clen or some sort of fat burner, maybe some Anavar to help retain muscle, or maybe other drugs that help them with their transformation, which is fairly normal, which should really stop, by the way. Because and then basically they come and go, well, I took Anavar and I felt really good. I felt really strong. I was bench pressing 40 kilos, but I was only like 100 grams of carbs every 5 days. I want to keep going. How strong will I be if I eat 500 grams of carbs and still take it? And then you're like, well, you're technically an untested lifter now because you're taking an anabolic. So let's do the right thing by it. You know what I mean? Very little people actually come in and be like, I was untested and now I want to be untested. So it doesn't really happen as much.
So I know we touched on transformations a little bit last time and how they may be responsible for getting more women into training in general. So you think a lot of the women using PEDs now in other bodybuilding and other sports, powerlifting, strong woman, whatever it might be, do you think that stems from there?
I couldn't directly say it does, but I've had experience of at least 20 women who have being asked to take X and Y supplement, which is on the banned list, who then move into powerlifting and go, oh, and he go over and be like, What's that you're taking? Oh, I've always taken this. My last coach told me it's good for energy when you're low on carbs. I'm like, that's Anavar. What? Anavar is a steroid. No. Anavar is banned. Oh, shit.
That sounds like really predatory to me. Like that their coaches are telling them to take these things that could potentially fundamentally affect them physiologically without them even knowing what it is.
Yeah.
Because I think it's one thing for you to make your own ignorant decisions, but it's another thing that, like you mentioned, if a female athlete has a singular trust in her coach, and they're advising to do things that could have long-lasting ramifications, that's dangerous territory to be in.
Yeah, it's dangerous. I don't know any personal coaches who do it.
Yeah.
If I did, I'd probably tell them how much of an idiot they are. But I do know it is happening. You probably have heard it yourself, haven't you? Like some sort of like kind of rumors or this, that, and the other. But it does happen. The problem with it, I find, is that at least if someone came to me and was like, "Well, I want to do this," say you came to me and we did 900, but like, this is what we're going to do and this is why we're doing it. They don't ever explain it to them. It's like, we're going to take some Clen, or we're going to take some Yohimbine, we're going to take some Anavar, because this is what it's going to do to help you with your transformation. But I want to also explain to you that this is what it is. This is why it does what it does. Do you know that kind of way?
Mm-hmm.
And then explain how it might affect their bloods, or affect their fertility, or affect other things. But they don't have that conversation with them because they're result driven, because they only have a short amount of time with them, because the business models get them working around very quickly. So they don't really have the same relationship. But then if you're also if you're an online coach with 50 clients, 100 clients, how is it possible to, how is it possible to be that personable with everybody? It's very difficult. Do you know that kind of way? Mm-hmm. So it's a hard situation to be in. And here's the thing. Predatory, but at the same time, I guarantee 90% of these women take it without even Googling it. The name is on the fucking vial. Like, it's not like they're being given something that's they've marched a serial code off. Do you know kind of way? Like, it's just like so.
There's a degree of personal responsibility.
Yes,
there as well. I would agree with that, because I've actually had this conversation with people in the past about if somebody is engaging in like dietary practices, let's just say that, and then develop disordered eating off the back of it. Like, some of it is they're adults that are voluntarily engaging in this thing. But I would also say, if you're a coach and you're going to cross the threshold of recommending something that is patently illegal, technically, you know what I mean? You're probably, if you're even going to go that route, have a conversation.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many people you coach, have a conversation.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, I just want to ask you one last question.
Yep.
And I'm going to just give it a bit of preface so you have a bit of a chance to think about it, right? So I don't look at performance enhancers through a moral lens. In fact, before the podcast started, we were talking about that the very nature of performance enhancing drugs being illegal kind of facilitates the problem with everything that in the same as narcotics. People want them, they're going to get them somewhere. So you're going to lead to things like overdosing and things like that, because people cannot get them easily from a doctor. So the idea of them being illegal is kind of moot. It doesn't actually keep them out of sport, right? But when you look over the period of time that you've used PEDs, you've worked with people that use PEDs, you've known people that use PEDs, do you think they negatively impact people's lives?
Yes. So let's what's the best way to put this? PEDs, they can affect your ability to think, your ability to live, your ability to make right decisions. Okay. I have personally known people who their relationships, long-term relationships, have fallen apart due to PED use. I myself have had some negative experiences with the use of PEDs, where I used them like nearly any other drug in a bad time in my life, and got very sick from them. And financially, they negatively affect, because at the end of the day, there's been times where I have put money that, say, I owe for rent or something into, like, oh, well, I need to buy this or I need to buy that. You know what I mean? Like, and I know a lot of people who have had to work like 3 jobs because they're trying to buy all the growth hormone they need, and because they work 3 jobs, they're not spending time with the kids, they're not spending time with the wife, and that ends up falling apart, and the singular goal becomes this this thing that involves PEDs. The legality of it makes it also quite difficult, because it has to be obtained through bad methods, because you gotta, like, you buy it from, you're not buying it from a shop, you know what I mean? You're not going to your doctor and buying it from a pharmacy. That money is going into some sort of hand. He doesn't give a shit that you're a power lifter or a bodybuilder or a strongman. It is drug money for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's brought these drugs in because it's probably a less risk than bringing in heroin or cocaine, or maybe the drugs are actually stacked with the heroin and cocaine. And when you buy them, that money is going into his hands, which eventually leads to all sorts of possible organized crime stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like, PEDs are normalized like weed, right, in our society. But until they become legal, how they get in here is through some sort of criminal. You're not walking in through you're not buying them in another country where they're legal and stick them in your backpack and walking through customs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, somebody along the line who's involved in crime is getting paid for these drugs. Simple. And that's kind of the biggest problem with them. I think if we were to really kind of look at it, right, and take everything I said over the last 2 podcasts, I took steroids because I wanted to be more than I was, more than I am, right? That's the reality. Not one of us who comes to training, trains 20 hours a week, watches everything they eat, goes to bed every night on time, doesn't have a drink on the weekend, telling me they're not kind of self-punishing themselves to become a better version of what they believe they should be. Mm. I'm just taking that to another level, right? That's probably more detrimental to me over 30 or 40 years than being 180 kilo body weight. Do you know that kind of way? So the answer is yes. But the answer is also, they exist. Be smart. Get help. Don't buy from shady guys on the corner or the big guy in the gym who's telling you your cycle. And and ask questions of the right people who are going to give you the right information. And for women, please stop taking Anavar just because you think it's going to help you look better. It's not a hardener drug. Okay? Nowadays, there's so much information on YouTube in regards to what's right and what's wrong. And there's a lot of safe use models out there. You can look it up. You can research it. If you want to talk to me ever about it, you're more than welcome to. Anonymously, I won't be walking around and going, John Boy from this place wants to talk to me. I won't be helping you with it, but I'll tell you if what you're planning is stupid or not.
Can I actually just ask, I was going to let you wrap it up yourself, but you mentioned something there. The reason you and maybe most other people started using PEDs was because you wanted to be more.
Yeah, I want to be better.
And do you think the PED use has done that for you?
Well, it was so long ago. I really wish I took longer with it. But at the time, it was the stupid idea that everyone else is doing it, so I should do it. So, yes, you can't say that I've totaled 930 kilos. I've done these numbers and it hasn't helped me do that. Do you know that kind of way? I would have probably got to similar numbers being natural, but maybe not.
Who knows?
Who knows?
So then the last question.
Yeah.
Has it added more to your life or taken more away?
Um,
And really think about it, because it's obviously you've
Yeah,
been
yeah,
using
yeah.
them a while, you know?
Yeah. Added or taken away? Added. My cousin the other day, young lad was like, Eamonn, what countries have you visited? Right? I think it's like 15 or 16. And like 13 of them are due to lifting. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Not saying I wouldn't have done them due to like not taking, but my strength, my powerlifting, my circle, which is they're part of, has allowed me to go to these far corners of the world for lifting. And then my knowledge of them has helped me also other coaches, which has meant I've gone to a few places because of them.
I love that that's the answer, because your little nephew, you said, was nephew?
Yeah, well, he told me, he asked me, he's like, how many countries have you been to? And I was
that's
like,
cool, man.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like it brings it all the way home, you know what I mean? Like, for whatever turbulence you've been through with injuries and personal life difficulties or whatever it may be, like, you can say you've had all these amazing experiences because of this sport, and potentially that these things have facilitated you meeting the person that could go and do all those things.
Yeah, like, let's put it this way, right? We don't know how long the war with Ukraine, Russia, or where that will go. I can say I've been to Moscow. That might not be possible for anybody for the next 30, 40, 50 years.
Very true.
You know, I could say I won in Moscow. I competed in a weightlifting and I won in Moscow. Like, you know, kind of way. Like, it's kind of cool to be able to say you've done that, because this is a country that might be literally cut off and nobody can fly into it from our side of the world anyway for so long.
Yeah.
That was lifting.
Historic in its own way. You could be potentially one of only a few lifters that can say they've done that over the next generation or two.
Yeah, you know, that kind of way. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, and then like I'm going to America. I got invited to Germany. I'm going to compete in a competition in Germany in Eisenhart. I've been all over the world. I've been invited to Australia. I've been invited to France, England.
Got to meet some of your heroes.
Yeah. And
Got to live with Matt Wenning.
got living with Matt Wenning. You know what I mean? Like, all these things
Yeah.
due to lifting is up there. And then like the respect that comes like, well, you're a really cool lifter. Can I talk to you? And then how that's brought me out as a person. And my job now, I don't know if I'd have the confidence now to do the job I do if I wasn't as confident becoming a coach. Do you know that kind of way?
For sure. And I suppose there's definitely an element of like probably brotherhood among all the big dudes.
Yeah.
That like know what it's like to be on the dark side.
Think about me and you though. Would we have ever met if I didn't lift?
Very good point. Very excellent point.
Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah.
This would have never happened if I never started lifting.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And I would like to say one thing.
Please.
I would like to share with you the collective view of everyone I've talked to that this podcast is very, very good. You need to keep it up, and what you're doing is great, and you're becoming a fantastic educator to the world of Irish powerlifting. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.